It is time for us to bring in our State House insiders. Antoine Seawright, our Democratic strategist, Dave Wilson, our Republican strategist. Guys, let's just talk about something that everybody seems to be talking about right now. That is store shelves that aren't fully stocked, high prices for food out there, high prices for gasoline right now, record high prices to buy a home right now. Dave, what's going on out there? Who's to blame for all of this?
I'm feeling like it's like 1975, 1978 Carter malaise all over again. We are looking right now at an economic downturn right now. You can't go to the grocery store and buy meat that hasn't gone up 10, 15, 20, some up to 100% higher than where it was just a few months ago. And that's one of those places where people are beginning to feel it. We're at a place right now, gas is topping well over $3. It hasn't been there for 8 years or so, and it's not seeing any signs of change. And when we start thinking about things like the Keystone Pipeline getting shut off, we're sitting there asking ourselves the question, why are we moving ourselves away of energy independence, of having an ability to take advantage of the resources that we have to keep prices like that low? You pair that with the clogs that are going on right now and materials being able to get here from overseas, and we've got a real issue going on that I think we're going to be feeling for several months ahead.
Well, I'm a little more optimistic than Dave because I want to paint some reality for the people watching at home. Number one, we're living through still the worst pandemic since 1913 that's caused some of the worst economic challenges since 1918. And so no one in their right mind thought that this was going to be an easy road to recovery. That's why the American Rescue Act was so important for putting money in people's pockets, but also giving states monies for them to be able to help the citizenship that occupy those states. What the president did earlier this week was he convened business leaders, port leaders to make sure certain ports in our country are running 24/7, asking certain CEOs like Walmart's and others to ramp up their pace in the effort to deal with this supply chain shortage that we're experiencing all around the country. And by the way, we went through this during the last presidency, so I don't think you can blame this president. And then he appointed a task force to deal with supply chain in general. And so will it be a rough spot? Yes, but our economy is one of such that is the ebbs and flows, and Dave noticed. And JR, in your intro, you mentioned home prices are high. That's a result of a good economic situation, not a bad economic situation that Dave talked about. And so I'm very optimistic that we will get to a better place. Are we in the best place right now? No, but that's why the work of the United States Congress, that's why the work of state legislature and local governments to get monies out for businesses to hire people and to put people back to work, make sure people are vaccinated and all those things. That's why it all works together for our economic situation.
I think we've got an ebb and flow that's going on here, though. And I will agree with Antoine, there is an ebb and flow that goes on within the economy. I think the thing about that ebb and flow is the ebb that we're seeing right now of people out of the workforce and the flow of the dollars coming into the economy are creating a thing right now where it's jacking prices up. We sat here and had the whole discussion one time about the $15 an hour. It is naturally happening on its own because house prices are going up. But the reality is what you're getting for your dollar is a lot less than it was when you were looking at same house 2 years ago. And so that's a place where inflation could turn into stagflation. And that's a place where if we have unemployment continue at this level and get worse and inflation continue to rise, welcome back to the 1970s all over again.
Well, Dave,
and that is a time period that some of us actually did live through.
Dave, let's not scare people too much because, as you know, we had some of the harshest economic times during the previous administration that we had in a generation. That's number one. Number two,
we also saw the greatest level of economic growth and opportunity within
Dave,
employment.
Dave, if you look at what has happened under this administration, considering the time we're living through, there's record economic growth, record job creation, and so forth under this administration coming out of the pandemic. That's number one. Number two, if you look at South Carolina, more people are working now than before the pandemic. Why? Because of the boost that has come down as a result of a strong economic standing from this administration. So we can have this conversation all day about who to blame. At the end of the day, when you talk about economics and you talk about people's pocketbooks and bread and butter issues, I don't see it as a partisan issue. I want everybody to be in a place where their children and their grandchildren can be better off than their parents and their grandparents. And that should be the goal of all of us. That's why businesses have to step up. That's why for the people who are anti-government, to hell with them, because guess what? In times like this, government plays a tremendous role in making certain that these people who need help can get the help that they need.
I want to touch on one other subject here before we let you.
We also, JR, we have to get to one point though, and that is this. We've got to have people who are actually going to work, Antoine, to be the answer to that part of your question right there. We need people who are going back into the workforce.
And 4 million people quitting their jobs in the month of August, a record high number here in the U.S. All right, I want to touch on something else here now. 2 civil rights groups suing the state of South Carolina over redrawing those district lines. They're saying lawmakers are taking too long here, guys. Candidates have to file by the end of March. They say time is running out here for any sort of challenges or research here, any potential lawsuits. But from my recollection, the pandemic delayed the census numbers until rather late, until just a couple of months ago. Isn't that right?
The pandemic numbers did impact when the numbers did come out, JR. And that has been a question that both political parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, have had to take a look at, because they have realized we are going to have to go back through and redraw the lines, and give credit to those members of the House and the Senate who are working. Even last night, I was talking with some senators who met together last night, and they were talking about the lines that are needing to be redrawn. That is a process that required us to have the census data in hand in order to be able to make those changes. We've got 5.1 million people in South Carolina. If you do the math on that real quick, 46 senators, each of them represents about 110,000 people. You're going to have to redraw some lines, and that's going to take some time.
I'm not a lawyer, but I won't try to play one on TV, but I don't think there's a requirement for the Senate, more so than the House, to have their maps drawn, because the House is up for re-election next year. I tend to flirtatiously agree with the idea that you have to give people time to plan. At the end of the day, what we're dealing with in a micro and a macro perspective, it could turn into a crisis, because you have to give people enough time to raise money, file. You're going to have some seats that may disappear, some may overlap, so you're going to see what that looks like. Also, keep in mind, there's likely going to be a challenge to the maps by way of a lawsuit. And so time for a lawsuit to settle in terms of, and get ready for the primaries in June of next year. And so time is of the essence. If you really want to blame somebody, I could easily blame Dave's party, because they're in charge of the General Assembly, as they have been for the past couple of decades now. But I'm not going to do that, because when it comes to redrawing the lines, although it is seen this way, it should not be viewed this way. It should not be partisan activity. People should be able to pick their representative, not their representatives picking them. And I hope we get to a place where we govern ourselves accordingly in this state and around the country, and not have packed districts to give this illusion of stick all the black people in one seat, put the white people over here, pack the blacks with Democrats, put the conservatives over here, and then we have what we've had around the country for some time now.
All right. It is October the 14th, JR. I can guarantee you this. Before the end of the year, we are going to have a democratically led lawsuit against these, and we will talk about it more than once on the Insiders before the end of the year.
As we should, because gerrymandering is a real thing in this country, thanks to you and your party, Dave.
We're out of time. I got to cut you guys off. We're out of time. We have to have this conversation another day, because we are way over time right now. I want to thank you both for your time on this Thursday night.